Can I how come I can't see me? I can't see anything.
Close your eyes and you'll see the world.
No, I
No,
can't
you're on.
see
Everything's right.
anything.
I'm on. I'm put my camera on, but
You
you're being
see me?
recorded at the moment.
Oh, there I am. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Shalom, everybody, and welcome to this week's Shir. It is August 17th, and in fact, it is the 20th of Av. The 20th of Av is Reb Leivik, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's father's yahrzeit. So it's an extremely auspicious day. He passed away on this day in 1944 after suffering 5 years of exile. He was arrested in 1939, and there are many, many stories about him. Hopefully, we will have some time at the end to speak about the Rebbe's father's yahrzeit. He is buried in Alma Ata, and as I say, it is an extremely auspicious day. This week's portion is the portion of Akev, and it carries many, many messages. I hope to share a few with you. Firstly, from this wonderful book called My Parsha, which every family should have. You could speak to the Chabad house, to Rabbi Mesinter, who is promoting it, and it is something you should teach your children from. Every week, at least at the Friday night Shabbos meal and Shabbos day, read something together from it. You can derive so much, and it'll certainly enhance your children's Shabbos. The word Akev, Vahoya Akev Tishmun, means it'll be as a result of you obeying God's commandments that Hashem will send you blessings. Rashi says the word Akev comes from the word heal, and it means mitzvahs she'odom dash ba'akevov. There are certain mitzvahs that people step on with their heel. What does that mean? They treat it lightly. They don't consider it a significant mitzvah. Each one should search his own heart as to what he knows is a mitzvah, and he doesn't take it severely enough. And it is by not only doing the mitzvahs that you think are important, but by remembering that the entire Torah is written by God and given to us. And so every mitzvah is important. That's when we will truly derive blessings. Another word, another meaning of the word Akev, by the way, is that it means heal. There are many people who wonder, in previous generations, there were such holy people. Even our own grandparents, we may look at them as holier, more sincere than we are. How can it be possible that Mashiach will come now and not in previous generations? And there are so many answers to give. But one answer is that the Jewish people are all one nation. And the holier generations, the previous generations, could be compared to the head and to the upper part of the body. The further down we go, like our generations, we can be considered like the heel. But the foot has an extreme advantage over the head. And do you know what that is? Pour a boiling hot bath and ask your head to go into that bath. And your head will say, what's Mr. Sugar? I'm not getting into that bath. I'll get burnt. Ask your foot, your heel, to go to the bath. And the heel will say, look, whatever you want, that's what I'll do. We might get burnt, but if that's what you're ordering me to do, I'll do it. So the heel is much more connected to the desire of the human being. It's not independent. It's totally nullified to the individual, whereas the head has its own independent thoughts. And so the people of the heel of this generation, being more sincere and ready to obey, we are the ones truly that will bring Mashiach. As the book tells us, there are 8 mitzvahs in the portion of Akev. Amongst them is the very important mitzvah that we should do every single time we have some bread and wash for bread. In this week's portion, it says, V'ochalta v'savata uveirachta es Hashem alekecha. You will eat, you will be satisfied, and you will bless God. And this is the mitzvah of benching. Benching, which is something we do every time we have some bread. And you know, the Jewish people, in a way, we are unique. There are many who say grace for food. But if you look at the difference, in most societies, they say grace before eating. The Torah gives us the mitzvah of benching after eating. And you know what the difference is? Before you eat, you are hungry. When you are hungry, it is natural to say please. It is natural to go out and ask someone for help. But once you have been satiated, to say thank you is a lot more difficult. As the story goes, 2 angels were sent down from heaven to collect prayers. One's bag was so heavy he could barely schlep it. The other bag was almost empty. It was light like a feather. When they asked the 2 angels, what's the difference between the 2 of you? Why is one so heavy compared to the other? And the first angel said, I was sent to collect all the prayers that start with please. That certainly is very heavy. The other one says, I was sent to collect all the prayers that say thank you. Thank you, there are a lot less. Because either way, when you're turning to someone, you have to, in a way, humiliate yourself. When you're hungry, it is easy to do that. When you are, however, full, satiated, to say thank you is less easy. And therefore, the Torah here stresses the mitzvah of benching. Another aspect is, you know, there are 3 portions of the Shema. Last week, we read the first portion. This week, we read the second portion. Lest you think that next week we will read the third one, you'll be mistaken. The third one, the portion of tzitzis, is actually in the book of Numbers, in the portion of Shlach. But in the second portion of the Shema, it talks about the mitzvah of mezuzah. And interestingly enough, he points out, you're not obligated to have a mezuzah on a shul. By the way, most of our shuls are not exclusively shuls. We have brachas in them, we eat in them, we chat in them. So they're not exclusively shuls. But a place that is exclusively a shul is exempt from mezuzah. And do you know why? So he tells us that a person must observe mitzvahs every single day and keep away from any mundane ones. It should all be for the sake of heaven. And this can be very difficult, especially when we're absorbed in our worldly matters. And that's why we put a mezuzah on our doors to remind us that we should be focusing on higher aspirations. And we won't enter or exit a room without kissing the mezuzah and reminding ourselves to be sanctified. An exclusive shul is already sanctified, therefore we don't need it. Now, in this week's portion, it talks about tremendous blessings. Amongst them is Baruch tia mikol ha'amim. You will be blessed by all the nations of the world, because we are, as we say, a light unto the nations. And our Torah, who is there, as the Torah says, Rak am chacham v'novim, with the Torah gives us knowledge and understanding. And I recall the Lubavitcher Rebbe at Fabrengens that I was at in the 70s was encouraging us to become that light unto the nations and to be Baruch Tia Mikol Ha'amim, that all the nations will bless us. And the Rebbe taught us that we should go out to all the nations, teaching about the Sheva mitzvahs b'nai Noach, the 7 mitzvahs that every human being is obligated to by the Torah. The Torah is not exclusive to the Jews. It also addresses all people. And the 7 laws that the nations have to keep, one is to believe in God. The second is not to curse Hashem. The third is not to murder. The fourth is not to eat a limb of a live animal, which some people used to do, especially in the old days when they wanted to get the spirit of the animal. They would just cut off a limb and drink the blood. We are not no one by Torah law is permitted to do that. Included in that is all the laws that we mustn't be cruel to animals. The 6th is not to steal. The 5th is not to steal. The 6th is not to commit adultery. And the 7th is a very encompassing law, which means established courts of law, that every country have civil matters. And once they put out a civil matter, and if it is not in any way contradictory to Torah law, that is the 7th law that we have to keep. So all social and civil laws. I remember Rabbi Ushbal Olav Shalom telling me that I mustn't speed on a highway because the law, the 7th law of Noach, says you have to obey the laws of the country, and a country has to make civil laws. So if the law is not to speed, then that is included. And when the Rebbe promoted this, he said it might sound strange to many of our nation because it has never happened before. Our parents and grandparents were never encouraged to promote these laws. And the Rebbe explained that when we lived in Eastern Europe and ghettos and places like that, it was quite dangerous to speak to other people about the Torah. But today, Baruch Hashem, we are living in a different age where everything is open and everyone speaks to everybody about everything in the world. So it is certainly incumbent upon us, as the portion says, Baruch Tia Mikol Ha'amim, to encourage everybody, Jews and not Jews, to fulfill Hashem's word and to bring the world into a heavenly sphere, promoting closer to Mashiach. And then on the 2nd page of this portion, the book tells us that Simloscha loi volso me'alecha, that one of the miracles that happened in the desert, in addition to the food being the manna, the water coming from the well of Miriam, the clouds protecting the Jewish people, also their clothing did not wear out. It grew with them. And the clouds basically freshened the clothing. It was as if they just came out of the cleaners, and no matter how you grew, your clothing always fit and was like new. And so he points out that clothing are used to express ourselves and allow us to interact with one another. And not only do we have physical clothing, but we know a human being is made up of a body and a soul, the soul being called the neshama. The body needs clothes, and the neshama also has garments with which it can express itself and interact. And we are taught in Tanya that every neshama, every person, every soul has three garments, and they are machshava, dibur, and maisa, thought, speech, and action. Thought is the way that we process things for ourselves. Speech is the way thoughts and feelings are conveyed to other, and actions impact things outside of the person. Now, clothing is an outward expression of that person. They can easily be exchanged or masked. For example, as he says, a doctor can dress as a mailman. In the same way, the garments of the soul are also just outward expressions that can be disguised. A person can say one thing and thinking of another. He can even do a favor for someone he doesn't like. He can think about something that he knows is wrong. Yet, we should know that all these expressions of the person can be controlled. We ourselves can focus on what our minds should choose and what we should say aloud and what proper activities. And this becomes our lifelong service of God, something to work on, to make sure that every thought, speech, and action expresses the beauty of our neshama. And just like clothing, beautiful clothing, can enhance our appearance, making us appear more beautiful, when we clarify, when we make our thought, speech, and action on a higher level, we can also make our soul beautiful. And he tells a beautiful story about double clothing. There was once a pious man who had a strange custom when giving charity. Whenever people would ask him for tzedakah, which was very often, his action was always the same. He would put his hand into his pocket, take out a coin, give it to the person, and then he would put his hand into the pocket a second time, take out more coins, and give it to the person as well. And his friend said to him, "Why do you do that? If you want to give an amount of money, why don't you just do it all at once?" And the man replied that our actions, the third garment of the soul, has an impact on our character. And it is not easy to break our selfish nature. It is not easy to always give to somebody else. And so each time I put my hand in my pocket to give tzedakah, I am breaking my selfish nature. Bit by bit, I am giving away my money to someone else. And since every action has an impact, I always split my giving into two actions. I cannot resist the opportunity of getting two refinements for the price of one. What a deep lesson. The Haftarah today, which we are going to read, is the second of the Shiva de Nechemta, the 7 of comfort, as discussed last week. In Shabbos Nachamu, last week there were 7 Shabbosim left to Rosh Hashanah, and today there are 6. And the second Haftarah, which is between Tisha B'Av and Rosh Hashanah, Isaiah promises us that God will never forget Jerusalem, as we see in our own lifetime. Isaiah prophesies that the exiles will return to these desolated cities, and non-Jewish kings will be their servants. He compares the future of the Jewish people to the rosy vision of Avram and Sarah, and Yerushalayim's future to the delights of paradise of Gan Eden. My friends, Akev has so much, including the beautiful praises of Israel. As the Torah says, it is a land where Einei Hashem Elokecha bo mereishis hashana v'adach rishona. God's eyes is upon it from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. The Rebbe often pointed out that the supervision of God on the land of Israel is even more pronounced than anywhere else in the world. It is interesting to note that the word Reishis, Mereishis Hashana, from the beginning of the year, in the Torah has no Aleph, and so Reishis there is spelt Tishrei, which is the month of our new year, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. As we get closer and closer, let us remember the Rebbe's father, the teachings, and the son he gave to the world, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who had such a profound impact on the entire world. And let us hope that their dreams will finally come to realization with the coming of Mashiach. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for listening. God bless you.